Hi everyone, my name is Laila Mureb. I'm a biologist and I work as technical director at Associação Mico, Dourado, or AMLD, which is the NGO that has the mission of saving the golden lion tamarin and their habitat, the Atlantic forest. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about one project implemented by AMLD from 2021 to 2024 called the reintroduction of epiphytes as a strategy of environmental enrichment, and how these plants are related to the conservation of these endangered primate species. So, a Associação Mico Dourado is based in the municipality of Silva Jardim, in the state of Rio de Janeiro. It was founded in 1992, but the history of the golden lion tamarin conservation began much earlier, in the 70s, and those efforts ultimately led to the formal establishment of the institution. Our mission is to promote the conservation of the Atlantic forest in the lowland coastal region of the state of Rio de Janeiro and all its characteristic fauna, especially the golden lion tamarin. So the first efforts for promote the conservation of the species was in the 70s. First, in 1969, the International Union of Zoo Directors banned the import of lion tamarins from nature to the zoos. In 1974, it was created the first federal biological reserve, the Poço das Antas Biological Reserve, which had the goal of protecting the remaining individuals of golden lion tamarins in the wild. In 1979, it was created the Primatology Center of Rio de Janeiro, which was the first conservationist-aimed captive center for animals in Brazil. And between 1983 to 2000, there was the reintroduction of captive-born individuals from zoos to the wild in order to reestablish the nature population. To save the species of extinction, it is needed a population of at least 2,000 GLTs, the golden lion tamarins, living freely in at least 25,000 hectares of protected and connected forest. With this size, the golden lion tamarin population will not go extinct within a 100-year horizon and will maintain good genetic diversity. This number came from a population and habitat viability analysis conducted using the Vortex software, which predicts extinction and survival probabilities of a certain population throughout time in different scenarios. So all of our actions are carried out in order to achieve that goal of 2,000 animals in 24,000 hectares of forest, and to reduce any threats that could affect the animals or their habitat. Among our strategies is the monitoring of free-living GLTs as to verify the population size and identify new possible threats in the territory. The monitoring is carried out through telemetry and population censuses that are carried out using playback and transects in the wild. The community engagement strategy involves the work with the community through the incentive to community-based cultural initiatives, the foment to more sustainable agricultural practice such as the agroforestry systems with small farmers, family farmers, and the foment to seedling nurseries to both provide seedlings for restoration actions and also income to the farmers of the region. Promoting the creation and management of protected areas is part of the forest protection strategy, while the forest restoration strategy focuses mainly on planting forest corridors to promote habitat connectivity. You can see in this image to the left a biological reserve called União that was created with help from AMLD. This area in the middle was a farm, this area here, called Fazenda Dourada, and in 2007, AMLD purchased this area and restored it and then donated the property to the Brazilian government to be also part of the Union Reserve. And as you can see in this map to your right, you can see the restored areas by AMLD. You can see they are not that large in size because the focus, again, is to promote connectivity. So it's not promote large enhances of hectares, but promoting connectivity between forest fragments that already existed. The environmental education and ecotourism strategies took a new dimension with the opening of the GLT Park, or Parque do Mico, in 2022. This space allows us to receive students from public schools, universities, and also the general public, which greatly expanded our reach in terms of engagement and especially environmental awareness to the general public. We also have a strategy focused on the mitigation of the impacts of linear infrastructure that fragments the landscape, especially the duplication of the BR-101 highway. In this case, we filed a complaint with the Public Prosecutor's Office to ensure the construction of a vegetated overpass, which was an environmental licensing requirement that was not being met by the concessionaire. Several animals have already benefited from this passage, including a puma, and we hope the tamarins will soon cross as well. In 2017, yellow fever hit the southeastern region of Brazil for the first time and caused a high mortality in several primate species. The tamarin population in our area suffered a 30% decline, going from 3,700 animals to 2,500 animals. And then there was put together this strategy. It was a yellow fever emergency. So this strategy involved the development of a vaccine for the animals, which was a joint initiative by many Brazilian institutions, such as Fiocruz, CPRJ, UENF, and CPB from ICMBio. Since 2021, we have been vaccinating tamarin populations with over 500 animals immunized so far. And finally, AMLD works with zoo associations abroad and with ICMBio in Brazil to coordinate actions for the integration of both ex situ and in situ management in accordance with the National Action Plan, the PAN, for the conservation of Atlantic forest primates and the maned sloth. Currently, about 160 zoos participate in the GLT management program. The global ex situ population is about 500 individuals, split in 4 subpopulations: Brazil, Europe, North America, and Australasia. The primary goal of ex situ management is to maintain a safety population for reintroduction in case of severe loss in the wild, but they also comply with other objectives, such as the direct funding for in situ projects, environmental education and public awareness, zoo-based research applied to in situ conservation, and advocacy and public policy development. And what do the GLT conservation program has to do with epiphytes? AMLD has 2 assets to protect, the golden lion tamarins and the Atlantic forest. For the golden lion tamarins, these plants provide a lot of important food resources. They can feed on their vegetative structure, their flowers, their fruits. These bromeliads are especially important because they provide water, frogs, and many insects and invertebrates that live between their leaves. Also, the bromeliads are the surface where the GLTs spend more time foraging, comparing to leaves on the ground or palm tree leaves. They are all foraging substrate for them. And for the Atlantic forest, they are a source of biodiversity. There are many insects and frog species that can live only in these plants. Also, orchid flowers attract a lot of pollinators that enhance the function of the forest. So the project, the reintroduction of epiphytes as a strategy of environmental enrichment, came together. AMLD, along with Embrapa Agrobiologia, Universidade Federal Rural do Rio de Janeiro, and Universidade Estadual do Norte Fluminense, all Brazilian research institutions, implemented this project between 2021 and 2024. It was part of a call for projects called Mata Atlântica, a joint initiative from the German Ministry of the Environment, the German Development Bank, the Brazilian Fund for Biodiversity, and the Brazilian Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change. The main goal of this project was to promote the enrichment of reforested areas, plantings done by AMLD and partners throughout time, using native epiphytes from the Atlantic forest in 150 hectares, following a novel protocol involving the nurseries network that produced 62,000 individuals for reintroduction, which belonged to 4 botanical families and 12 different species. There were introduced 3 bromeliads, Tillandsia gardneri, Tillandsia stricta, and Achmeia nudicalis, which is particularly important for primates, and 3 areaceae, the Philodendron pedatum, Monstera donsoni, and Philodendron ornatum. There were also reintroduced 2 species of orchids, Cattleya ferbesti and Cattleya harrisoniana, and 4 species of cactus, Hypsalis teres, Hypsalis trigona, Hypsalis elliptica, and Hypsalis oblonga. Well, the first step to begin the reintroduction was to provide capacity building for the nursery owners to start the epiphyte seedling production, which is a kind of horticulture they weren't using to do. They've never done that kind of culture before. It was also possible to promote remodeling and adequation of the structure of the nurseries, promoting a better economic condition during their work activities. In November of 2022, a pilot experiment was put together with the reintroduction of the first hundreds of epiphytes. The mortality and fixation rate of the seedlings were tested in 2 different environments. One in new restoration plantings around 2 to 3 years old, with a more open canopy, more luminosity in the system, and a more dry environment. And the other were older plantings with over 20 years old, and that had a more humid, a more shady, and closed canopy. With the results obtained from the first 18 months of observations, a novel protocol for reintroduction was elaborated, which guided the larger reintroduction conducted afterwards. From August to November of 2023, more than 62,000 of epiphytes were reintroduced in a total of 150 hectares in 4 different sites in the São João River Basin. One is the Parque do Mico, our headquarters. The other site was the Biological Reserve of Poço das Antas. Another biological reserve also had the reintroduction of epiphytes, the União Reserve, and a private reserve from a partner, a landowner that is partner with AMLD, called Quero Quero. And because a big mortality of bromeliads and cactus was observed in all the plantings, these families were not represented in similar environments during their reintroduction. In the scope of this project, it was also possible to foment 4 different research lines with incentives to researchers. Besides the mortality and fixation of epiphytes, studies of mammals, amphibians, and bees communities in areas that were restored, conserved, and in sites with and without epiphytes were also fomented. So, in conclusion, the Epiphyte project involved different actors from the community, the nursery owners, seed collectors, the local companies that were responsible, they were hired to do the reintroduction, researchers, and conservation practitioners, as represented by AMLD team. And 2 years after the reintroduction, we had this really interesting record. So thank you very much for your attention. These are our social media accounts. If you want to know more about the GLT Conservation Program or pay us a visit any day. Então, muito obrigada.
So, hi Laila, how are you?
Hi, Juliana, I'm fine. I hope you are well too. And I'd like to say hello to all the society and thank you all for the donation you did for us. It meant a lot for us, so thank you very much.
As I understand, the habitat for the golden lion tamarind is the lowland dense forest. That is the area where people want to live, farm. So, that forest was completely destroyed over years of colonization, centuries, right? And the golden lion tamarind just like barely survived, almost disappeared in that process. So like how do you bring that back? How can you make that forest come back? Because you may have a bunch of animals that came from different zoos, but if you can't create a place, a home for them to live, then you can't save the species, right?
So it's essential actually because the golden lion tamarins, they are territorialist animals. So each group of around 6 to 10 individuals, they require a habitat of at least 40 hectares each for each group. So that's a lot of forest, especially when we think about the Atlantic forest in the lowland area of Rio de Janeiro, which is our case. And as you said, it's the same place that people want to spend their vacations, they want to explore. Historically, in Brazil, it was when the Atlantic forest was the first biome that was destroyed because the Portuguese colonization started here in this region. So it really has this history of centuries of urban occupation. So basically, how do we restore the forest? First, with the Atlantic forest now is protected with a bunch of strong environmental laws. There's a specific laws for the Atlantic forest in which after you acquire, you purchase your own land, even then you can't destroy everything. You need to protect at least 80% of the area. So even if you acquire a land, you can't destroy the forest that is still that already existed there. So this helped a lot to put a break on the deforestation. And what we do actually as a civil society organization, because we are not the government, we can't impose some things to the landowners. We try to engage them in the conservation. Because of the law, the landowners, they are obligated, they mandatorily need to restore some parts of the properties, for example, that we call the permanent environmental protected areas, or APP in the Brazilian law. So all the forest of the riverbeds. They need, even if it's not, if it's deforested, they need to restore it. And the top of the forest on the top of the hills, this kind of forest, they are obligated to do that. However, one challenge for the landowners is that restoration here is a costly process. So sometimes it's not that the landowner, they don't want to do that, but they can't afford it financially. So one thing that we usually do, we acquire with financial resources from donors, and we carried out this restoration in the lands of the landowners that allow us to do so.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about the Epiphyte project.
Okay.
So I see here that it seems like the golden lion tamarins, they practically never go down to the forest floor. They're always hanging out on the tops of the trees.
Yeah.
So how important is that the trees have all the little plants, the epiphytes that live there?
So I think for the GLTs and for a bunch of other arboreal mammals, arboreal animals actually, especially the bromeliads within the group of epiphytes, they are especially important because they are an ecosystem for themselves in the Atlantic forest. They provide water, they provide many invertebrates, many small vertebrates like some frogs that can only live inside the bromeliads. So actually the bromeliads are the surface in which the golden lion tamarin spend the most time foraging and searching for food along all the strata of the forest. So they
And
are.
you learned that during your work with like trying to recover the population?
Yes, actually, this was one of the first published articles about the golden lion tamarins ecology, their feeding ecology. So so the researchers, they counted and separated through observations how much time the animals spent foraging in each surface. They compared tree trunks, they compared the soil, the ground, the bromeliads, the palm trees, all the strata that are really diverse in the Atlantic forest, and they compared it. And the bromeliads were one of along with the palm leaves, the palm tree leaves, were the most important surfaces for them.
They also eat palm tree leaves?
They don't eat. They forage the habitat through tactical with their fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So they spend their time searching for food in these surfaces.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. Okay. And so I will have another question. So they spend a lot of time foraging in the bromeliads. So I'm assuming, do they also eat the fruits of the bromeliads by any chance?
Yes, they do. I think they also eat the nectar of not only bromeliads but flowers in general that they can find.
Uh-huh.
And also, when the bromeliads are dry, they sleep on it. They use it as a sleeping place, a sleeping site.
Like a rede, hammock.
Yeah, like they also hid on there, on
That's
the
cool.
big ones.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like maybe if they could have a role of dispersing seeds and fruits, does that happen?
Not for the bromeliads, because the type of dispersion there, I think, is mostly done by birds, at least here
Uh-huh.
in the site, and through wind. There are many bromeliads like the tillandsias that I mentioned in the presentation, We call it cravo do mato. I don't know which translation could be better for that.
Yeah, cravo, it's carnation, jungle carnation.
Jungle carnation, yeah. They are mostly dispersed through wind, for example. So in that part, the GLTs don't contribute that much for the bromeliads as the other way around.
Yeah, but they eat like the also the insects and the little frogs. They eat all that stuff.
Yeah, they drink the water.
It's like a vending machine.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah. So you guys go, you do all this work of planting the seedlings, the forest grows, and then like you said, the epiphytes didn't come back.
Yeah.
Why not?
So it's not that well known, but we did before the implementation of this project, when we applied for that call, we did a bibliographic study, and there were studies that show that even after 40 years of the arboreal trees planted, there were still no epiphytes. Maybe it's because of lack of dispersion, maybe because they are too far away from their sources. So in our case, because we saw this opportunity with this project, we wanted to provide more function to these ecosystems, because as we say, it would be only empty forests. And the ecological restoration is not only about the structure of big trees covering what once was pasture, but also restoring the ecosystem as a whole with their functions, with their services. So it was a way of accelerating this process through the reintroduction.
Okay. And how did you choose the species? Because I see that there was a very deliberate choice. You got like a certain number of orchids, a certain number of aroids, certain number of bromeliads, a certain number of cacti. It was just not, it's not everything. You made some choices, right?
Yes.
Why? How?
We did with the partnership with the universities I mentioned. It was essential to do that, because the professors and the researchers did levantamento survey, a floristic survey in nearby fragments, searching for the epiphytes that were still there. So the most abundant ones of each of those 4 families were represented in the experiment, because even though we did in a large scale, like 150 hectares, it's for us, at least in this region, it's large scale of restoration. It was a novel action, so it is still.
It's like 300 acres, something like that.
I guess, yes. I think 1 acre is like 1.6 hectares, right?
Yeah, that's double to make it easy. So around 300 acres of restoration that was like mature forest, but had no epiphytes.
Exactly. Some of those they differ in the time they were planted. For example, we have one area, the Fazenda Dourado one. It was planted with 10. It was like a 10-year forest, and in the park here at our headquarters, it was really younger, like 3 years, 3-year-old forest. And also it was an opportunity to test different habitats and different ages of restoration. And that was also evaluated in the pilot experiment with different conditions.
So the actual planting was into what year?
Some sites were planted in 2011. 2011, they were already grown, actually. And others were in 2020.
Okay.
And the epiphytes were reintroduced in August of 2023.
So you have 2 years, maybe 3 years of monitoring after the epiphytes were reintroduced.
Actually, we had a smaller amount of time because the project, the call, it required from us that we reintroduced all the saplings, the 62,000 saplings, in up to 2020, March of 2024. So it was only 1 year of monitoring. So we did the reintroduction without many data that now we have, especially in the sense of survival of the epiphytes. What we are seeing is that in more older plantings, they tend to die more. We lost a lot of epiphytes, especially the bromeliads and the cactaceae, in the older plantings. The more shady ones and more humid and cold. We think that one possible explanation is that during the reintroduction, we did put them like in chest height, like this. So maybe if we put them on top of the trees, like when they would be more naturally dispersed and would have had more sunlight available and less humid condition, maybe they would thrive more. Because here at our site, when the newer plantings, they are more open canopies and less humid, hotter, they thrive far much better.
See, yeah, but that shows that the challenges, because it's a lot of work, a lot of labor. You have to go tree by tree and mount these plants, and then if you have to climb the trees, the old big trees to go to the branches, then it's a lot harder, right?
Yes, exactly. Just regarding the labor, we hired 2 different companies to cover all the plantings and put all the epiphytes in the field, and they took like 6 months to do everything, like 2 different companies, because you need to wrap them around the tree trunk, so, and not that tight so they don't die, but not that loose, so when we have a storm, for example, they don't fall on the ground. So it's a more delicate kind of labor.
Yeah. Did you just do the planting, or you did like watering? Is there anything else?
No, we only did the tying and the implementation of the settings.
And then did you put, and then you already had them, the cameras, to see like how the tamarins would interact?
Yes, we put some camera traps aimed to this. We actually compared the trees that had bromeliads before, not on the restoration site, but on the natural side, the native forest site with bromeliads, and compared the usage of both of them. Although we had some many interesting records of the GLTs using the reintroduced epiphytes, they are still less used than the native ones. But we hope that in the future, the animals will know that there is a source of food and sleep there, so they tend to use more those epiphytes.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because there are so many factors at play. You reintroduced the epiphytes, but then there are these little details that maybe are very important for the GLTs that are not obvious to the scientists, the biologists, right?
Yes.
Of like
Yeah.
where the plants are located, the which heights of the canopy and stuff like that. That may be very important for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. It's amazing how you take an umbrella species, like you call it, right? The
Yes.
golden lion tamarin. So, everything they do has this impact on the whole forest. So it's like they are an ambassador. They take care of the whole forest. For them to be well, everything else has to be well, right?
Exactly. And because the Atlantic forest harbors this large diversity, especially of endemic species, uh, every action that provides and that promotes the conservation of the Atlantic forest will help all of the fauna that is associated to it and all the flora too.
Exactly. So we are here going back to the bromeliads again. Most of the species that we grow in horticulture and that were used to make the colorful hybrids that you can find these days, they come from the Atlantic forest, and specifically most of them from the lowland forest that basically doesn't exist anymore, just tiny fragments, right?
Yeah.
So it's like their destinies are together. The golden lion tamarins and the bromeliads, because they are part of this beautiful, most diverse ecosystem in the world that basically doesn't exist anymore, and we are
Yes.
trying to bring it back
Mhm.
because it's a great loss to all of us.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's wonderful. We just talked to Laila Mureb again. She is the technical coordinator of the Save the Golden Lion Tamarin. Thank you so much, Laila. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Juliana. Thank you all for having me today too.
Bye.